This video will have spoilers for the Shadows House anime. If you care about spoilers for the Shadows House manga, then no need to worry. I will be talking about some manga scenes, but only in relation to stuff that has already happened in the anime. I won't be spoiling any of the big twists that come later. Shadows House is a pretty unique series. Bad horror relies on excessive gore or cheap jump scares to frighten you. Conventionally good horror slowly builds to a terrifying climax that makes you scared of other people and the world around you. But Shadows House does neither of those things. The horror of Shadows House comes from the feeling of seeing something so obviously not right being treated as completely normal. Okay, but let's talk about anime adaptations. Most anime are adaptations of other source material such as manga, light novels, or visual novels, and are mostly meant to be advertisements for their source material. Of course, there are some anime studios that go above and beyond, like Studio Ghibli and Trigger, which mostly do original stories, or studios like KyoAni, Wit, and Shaft, which mostly adapt from source material, but put tons of love into their work to create beautiful visuals, as seen in A Silent Voice, Attack on Titan, and the Monogatari series. But then there's a lot of anime that clearly doesn't have as much love put into it, or at least, the producers and directors behind these shows seem to not have as much of a vision as those from the previously mentioned studios. Studio CloverWorks seems to be at a middle ground between these two types of studios, with an additional curse that I'll get to later. The only original I've seen from them is Wonder Egg Priority, which is definitely their best looking show and clearly has the staff's talent being put to good use. Most of the other stuff they do is adaptations, which do tend to be a bit more than source material advertisements. Bunny Girl Senpai looks pretty bland, but something like Horimiya definitely stands out from the standard anime. And then you get to something like The Promised Neverland, which isn't really stunning, but it does have good character animation and a lot of interesting cinematography, showing someone had a good vision for the show. Before season 2. And that brings us to Shadows House. I watched the first episode soon after it first aired, and liked it enough to make this tweet about it. In terms of visuals, after watching Wonder Egg, it's definitely a downgrade, but it's still not bland to look at either, especially when you see the show's first mystery appear in front of you. The most important thing in Shadows House in terms of keeping people watching is intrigue. What are the shadows? Are they humans? What is soot? Why are the characters forced to participate in a system in which the only reason they keep working as slaves is because they keep telling themselves that working is great? All these trivial matters which I must not fret over kept me watching until the start of the debut arc, which is when I decided to pick up the manga. I guess as an ad for the source material, the Shadows House anime did its job. It got me invested in the story and characters, but there were also some things that made me feel like the manga would be better. Here's another trivial matter. What are scorches? They're little CGI creatures that look very out of place in the art style of the anime and give me Promised Neverland Season 2 flashbacks. You know, in the manga, these probably stand out but still blend into the art style of the manga and look like mystical supernatural creatures. And here they look like not that. There was also Edward's CGI piano hands, though it was mostly impatience to see what happened next that got me to read the manga, not these few aesthetic choices that I didn't like. As I expected, the manga's art was a lot more consistent with itself, and as I read over 100 chapters, it quickly became one of my favorite manga. And I caught up to it just in time to see the end and aftermath of the debut arc in the anime, which have some of my favorite scenes from the entire series. I caught up just in time to see those scenes get ruined. There isn't much to complain about story-wise in the end of the debut, but I do think reading the manga kind of made these moments hit less hard. This manga panel was so hype I posted it on Twitter. And it works as a single image because it's conveying the fast motion and takes up the entire page for more impact. In the anime, it almost feels like a static shot. There's just some panning of the camera, the background's moving, and the wind is pushing the character's hair and clothes some. Also, the anime feels like it has this gray filter over everything. The manga's a lot brighter. All this makes this shot have a lot less impact, which is bad because this moment is supposed to be a surprise after Edward was thinking to himself about how the pair had no chance of winning. Why can't CloverWorks make one of the most hype moments in this arc stand out from any other random shot when Studio Gainax can make some guy standing look like the most epic scene ever? Where's the impact? Oh, I might have found it. CloverWorks makes up for me noticing when they just colored a manga panel with the animation on the soot powers. Kate's wings were beautiful, the John punch was powerful, and Shirley melting looked insane. But as I stated before, the most important thing in Shadows House is the intrigue, though that intrigue doesn't just come from mysteries. Those are mostly just story hooks to get you interested. The real intrigue of this story comes from how, in the same way as The Promised Neverland, it turns into more of a political thriller than a mystery show, where the characters must find a way to simply survive in the system they have found themselves in, eventually rebel against it, and along the way they figure out the mysteries. And after the debut is over, the manga gets straight into adding a ton of that. Kate and Emiliko know they must rebel against the manor, and so they spend time figuring out who they can trust, how they can safely contact those people, and what information to reveal, while still trying to go along with what's expected of them. Every move could catch the eye of a star-bearer, every word could get you turned in as a dissident, every action must be thoroughly thought through. Yeah, the anime just didn't do that. I think the main problem with this anime is that it just lacks the same subtlety that the manga had. We can't get naturally introduced to Emiliko's living situation and come to the conclusion that something's weird on our own. Instead, one of the first things we see is a bunch of children clearly getting brainwashed and the villains smiling to themselves. The scorches and phantoms are CGI instead of the ones from the manga, which really feel like the darkness and shadows of the background transformed into monsters. The brainwashed eyes are static, as if begging the Shadow Masters to notice that something is wrong. Of course, in the manga, the eyes are pretty noticeable too, but as a still image, it just makes more sense. It's supposed to be like the eyes are filled with soot, not like the eyes have lost connection to the broadcasting station. And they really just made the static fade out like this? In the manga, Kate seemingly stops Emiliko before the brainwashing is done, and Emiliko has her eyes closed because she's crying. Because of that, both Kate and the audience are unsure if the plan actually worked. But then, Emiliko expresses something she shouldn't be thinking under the control of the Shadows House, a frustration with herself over feeling joy about Rum's failure. And then bam, beautiful drawing of her blue eye, free from brainwashing. It literally would have been easier to put that in the anime, but instead, they chose this cheap-ass fade, which even I know how to do in my free video editing software. This lack of subtlety carries over into the plot as well, and ruins the feeling of intrigue. In the manga, there's about an episode's worth of content in between when Emiliko's brainwashing is broken and when Sean's is. Kate needs to get in contact with John, but she knows she can't draw any unwanted attention to herself, and so she carries out a plan that involves her going through the routine of a normal, newly debuted shadow. We build on the characters we already know, show the effects of the coffee brainwashing, introduce new characters, and learn more about soot powers. All that is combined with the tension, humor, and satisfaction of Kate delivering a letter to John, and all of that comes to a head with one of the best scenes in the entire manga. If there was any specific scene I was waiting to see in the anime, it was this one. Kate's brilliant move using a bunch of different facts about both Soot and the characters that we've learned up to this point to get in contact with the one person who could definitely be an ally directly prompts John to begin thinking about how Sean has been acting differently. The difference between this scene in the manga and the one in the anime is that in the manga, John is alone with Sean. Kate isn't there to tell him what he should be doing, and so every one of his thoughts and actions are his own. Sean's brainwashing is dealt with solely through John realizing he's been acting differently. He perfectly follows John's orders without any pushback, lets John ignore his carrots, and doesn't lecture John anymore. At first he thinks about how he kind of likes it. John will never have to eat carrots again! But then he realizes what it means to have lost Sean's lectures. It means he's lost his true connection with Sean. He's lost the Sean who truly cared about him and lectured him because of that. We see John not just question the Shadows House, but Kate as well. We see him test what Kate says about the brainwashing. We see him realize that Kate is probably right about how he's being influenced. And then we see John's connection with Kate, which up to this point had mostly been comic relief, but in this scene becomes legitimately emotional. John decides that his love for Kate and connection to the true Sean is more important than the system he happens to live in and benefit from. That's when John decides he needs to break Sean's brainwashing in the most John way possible. Not after Kate just walks into his room and instantly reveals all the secrets she knows. In the manga, this chapter was nothing short of beautiful and made me love John. In the anime, this scene is when I realized that the aesthetic wasn't the only thing CloverWorks was messing up. After Sean's brainwashing is broken, we skip 10 chapters and the introduction of a whole arc as these three jog over to Patrick's room, which is completely against the rules, by the way. You're not allowed to meet up with shadows at night like this, so it's kind of strange how Lou and Ricky, who are still brainwashed, just don't do anything about it. And goddamn, this conversation. I guess Patrick and Louisa agree to help Kate, but I don't know why they did it. In the manga, the reason for Kate meeting up with the others is different, but the same kind of thing happens where Louisa and Patrick don't really care about helping her. So Kate has to carefully maneuver the conversation to make them like her more, and in the end, she decides that she won't try forcing them to help her at the cost of their friendship. And that's when they both willingly decide to help her. In the anime, I don't think they even verbally agreed to help, they just kind of go along with the plan. Okay, so Edward has a 500 IQ move here. He needs to turn in Kate as a dissident, so he kidnaps Emilico and traps Kate with her. Oh wait, they escaped really easily. So Edward chases them up this tower, and when Kate and Emilico decide they can just fly away, Edward's like, haha, you will fall to your deaths. I will not do anything. But dude, your whole plan to get to the 3rd floor involves turning in Kate as a dissident. You can't do that if she dies. You need to stop her. Okay, maybe Edward would still be able to get rewarded if Kate dies. If that's true, why didn't he use his sound wave attack on Kate like he does in this scene? If it's fine for her to die, just kill her already. Also, I guess this is already a thing in the anime, and I'm not sure if I should consider it a spoiler or not, because they didn't show who the character was, and people on Mal are still confused. And I guess I should be glad they left it open for a 2nd season, even though they've already rearranged the story in such a weird way that scenes from like chapter 100 happen right after scenes from chapter 50, and they cut out the rogue Shadow Master, so I don't know how they would properly make the arc, and they could have just ended the season by properly adapting the aftermath of the debut up to when Sean's brainwashing is broken, and it would have been an emotional payoff, and then there could have been some narration like, yay, there's hope we can find allies in the manor and fix the brainwashing. But no, we need to have this anime original arc where all the characters drop into negative IQ that will mess up a bunch of payoffs in the future, and yeah, I don't think this is gonna get a sequel, or at least not a good one. That's the CloverWorks curse. Though it obviously hasn't just been CloverWorks doing this kind of stuff. One of the most well-known phenomena in the anime community is the anime original ending. A lot of the time they happen because the anime and source material are serializing at the same time, and the anime is forced to make its own ending. But in the case of something like Shadow's House or The Promised Neverland, which have plenty of material to be adapted, it happens because the shows don't make enough money. Producers think that it simply isn't worth it to give studios money to naturally complete their adaptations, and once they find out they aren't being given a proper number of episodes, the directors and writers are forced to find a way to rush the anime to completion. It's a completely corporate decision, and you can always tell when this has happened in an anime based on either how the plot has completely gone off the rails, or how the manga readers have completely gone off the rails. Now I understand how it feels to be that angry manga reader. I knew Tokyo Ghoul had turned into a mess without reading the manga, but I haven't felt that way about most other shows that manga readers seem to be angry about. I was still vibing with The Promised Neverland Season 2 until the last 2 episodes, and I still ended up feeling it was like at least a 5. And Attack on Titan Season 4, people were really that mad about the jacket scene? I mean, I'm not sure why they changed it, but it still looked badass. Of course, small details like that aren't the same as the massive plot changes in The Promised Neverland, but both of those things do matter. The construction of the main plot and the small details which add character. Where were the carrots? At the start of this year, I told myself that I'd try to avoid making videos about stuff I disliked, unless my sister made me watch it. I wanted to avoid spreading negativity and just talk about stuff that I love. And I love the Shadow's House manga, so why can't I just stick with that? That's one common response I see towards angry manga readers, at least I know I've used it before. If you hadn't read the manga, these scenes would have been fine. The manga is better, so just ignore the anime. If there's any series meant to challenge that mindset, it's Shadow's House. In chapter 80, Emilico thinks about how she has to be constantly busy throughout the day. She thinks about how stressful it is living without the brainwashing coffee and knowing some of the secrets behind the manor. She thinks about how her life would have been easier if she just didn't know all this information and if she just accepted the system. And it's true, ignorance is bliss, but even though she'd be happy, she'd still be living in an unfair system as a slave. Her knowledge of what the Shadow's House actually is what allows her to know it must be changed. And that kind of applies to the situation of manga readers. It probably is true that we would have liked this adaptation better if we hadn't read the manga, but our knowledge of another version of the story is what allows us to better criticize the anime. In many cases, it does seem like manga readers are too attached to adaptations being exactly like the manga up to the smallest detail, but in the case of Shadow's House, if I hadn't read the manga, I probably would have accepted the scene where Kate just walks into John's room. But now I know there's a way better scene that could have happened, and a way better arc that could have led up to it. Why does it matter that the adaptation is bad when the source material already exists? Well, when you see something you like, you want others to see it too. But a lot more people watch anime than read manga. The Shadow's House manga literally has 1/10 the amount of people reading it than the anime does watching it. When I go to the Mal forum to see people's reactions to the crazy stuff that happened in a chapter I just read, sometimes literally no one else has responded to the guy who made the chapter discussion. That never happens with anime. And the reason for that is, I assume most manga readers in the West started out as anime watchers. And I'm sure a lot of people who started reading manga because of anime realized that manga was their preferred medium over anime, but not most people. Not me. Anime is still our favorite medium, and that's why it's inherently valuable to us to see these scenes get animated. But because of this anime original ending, now we know that's never going to happen. At least, not in the way it was supposed to. Studio CloverWorks has started a weird trend for itself. We all know what happened with The Promised Neverland. I only watched one episode of Horimiya, but I heard that show cut out a bunch of manga chapters. And Wonder Egg slowly went downhill up to its anticlimactic Season 1 ending and whatever the special was supposed to be. I don't know what it is, but the people in charge keep cutting off sequel seasons or devolving their best properties into boring, incomprehensible garbage. Not only that, but they also seem to be set on working their employees to death. It's pretty sad to see production committees forcing their creators onto such tight schedules and still not grinding shows out of them as consistently good-looking as those from KyoAni. Just goes to show how a stressful workplace run by people who care about profit more than creativity isn't what creates the best-looking anime. It especially hurts to see a show with an actual unique premise and that's clearly trying to be somewhat meaningful get treated like this, while the same 20 isekai manage to be more popular and get second seasons. We're never going to see the resolution to the Ghost Disturbance animated. We're never going to see Lou and Louisa working out. Wow, she's cute. We're never going to see the character that has my name. Yeah, I still have the manga, but I want to see this great story adapted to have movement, voice acting, a nice soundtrack, and more banger endings. It sucks that that's probably never going to happen now. And that's why I'm mad. That's why manga readers are always mad about this stuff. And you should be too. This whole video has just been me justifying my own anger, but what's our solution? Well, the main reason for anime original endings like these obviously isn't that the creators aren't passionate enough or they want to give their shows bad endings. It's that a lot of the time, it's just not worth it to make more episodes. Creators need funding to make shows, and they get that funding from producers. So when producers feel they won't be profiting enough, they choose to not fund more anime. Of course, no one in this situation is going into it with the intention of stifling creativity. Everyone needs to get money somehow, and because of that, the only way people can survive while making art is by getting paid through what they create, or having some other job that takes away time from creating. The underlying problem is the fact that this is the case, that the creation of more good art is discouraged by the need to earn money, and oops, I guess we have to destroy capitalism. Okay, there are actually some ways to work within the system to change it in this case. So let's try to look at some studios that at some point actually focused on supporting creativity. You've probably heard of Studio Mappa, but you might not know the story of its creation. Mappa was founded by Masao Maruyama, who used to be the main producer of Studio Madhouse. As a producer, Maruyama eventually started giving funding to as many high-quality projects as he wanted, and drove the company into bankruptcy. That's when he left to found Studio Mappa so that he could continue doing the exact same thing. That's why so many early anime from Mappa have such crazy production value. It was run by a guy who cared about promoting creativity without much care for profit. However, this reckless drive to fund high-quality projects has a big effect on the staff as well. Maruyama doesn't work at MAPPA anymore, but the same kind of mindset seems to be persisting in the people currently running the studio, leading to countless headlines of underpaid animators and conditions somehow worse than the already horrible working conditions for animators of the average studio. And even if it didn't have an effect on the working conditions, examples like that are pretty rare and completely out of our control. Us Western anime fans really don't have that much we can do to change or support the industry. We can't just get a job as the head of CloverWorks, and we can't just walk down the street to our favorite studio and give them all our money either. If only there was a way to donate to creators and support future projects that we'd like to see. Oh wait, Studio Trigger literally did that and was able to create an OVA's worth of constant energy and great animation in the form of Little Witch Academia. And they have a Patreon which earns this much extra money to spend on doing whatever they want with it. Based on my limited knowledge of the anime industry, stuff like this is an obvious solution for bad adaptations. Studios could ask for money to help create a show, which would give producers more profit and make them less likely to cut off sequels or rush their anime's production. And this doesn't have to only help with making anime. The only studio with consistently good production value and working conditions was the target of one of the deadliest massacres in Japan since World War II. But look at how much money the community gave them to help rebuild. This is all clear proof that people will support studios that they like as long as there is an option to do so. But I still don't have the option to give Naoko Yamada a donation every time I remember how much I love K-On! Or support any of the overworked and underpaid animators from other studios, or help CloverWorks make Season 2 of Wonder Egg priority. I think that's what Trigger is trying to push for with their Patreon and other crowdfunding efforts. If Little Witch Academia was able to get this much funding for their second OVA, imagine how much money people might have spent to make sure The Promised Neverland would have gotten a proper second season. Imagine how much money people would have given to MAPPA so that Attack on Titan Season 4 could have had less CGI. Of course, the Patreon isn't nearly enough to fund an entire show or anything right now, but neither is Crunchyroll, really. You might feel like your $10 premium membership is doing more than a $5 Trigger Patreon donation, but those $10 get split between Crunchyroll and all the shows you watch in a month. So if you spend a lot of time watching a lot of different shows, let's say more than one each month, your donation to the industry is already less than what you could have given to Trigger. And yeah, some of your money will go to Attack on Titan, but your money also gets sent to all the shows you hated and dropped after one episode. If The Promised Neverland Season 2 had been on Crunchyroll and you had watched it there, that means you would have been monetarily encouraging CloverWorks to keep doing this kind of stuff. The Studio Trigger Patreon is an alternative to this. If you like what they're doing, you can give them money. If you don't like what they're doing, you can give them less money. Of course, I'm not saying that Crunchyroll should be deleted or something and that all anime staff should only get paid through Patreon. Crowdfunding is just an additional, more effective way of supporting what you like. And it should be no surprise that the first studio to adopt crowdfunding is the one whose core staff has always been making shows about progress and ending stagnation. Studio Trigger has taken a step in the right direction towards being able to directly support what anime you want to see without supporting what you don't want to see. The adoption of more crowdfunding methods by anime studios will probably take a while, especially in a business culture that seems set on keeping things the way they are. And as Western anime fans, it's really hard to feel like we're having a direct effect on the industry when there's literally an entire ocean between us and the people who make the shows we watch. And the few of us who have made it over there seem to have given up hope and tell us to just support the industry through streaming platforms that don't really help the industry that much. But Shadow's House tells us to not give up hope. Emiliko is pretty dumb, and has the same kind of straightforward idealism as many anime protagonists. Even though all signs point towards Shirley being dead and Rum being discarded, she still sets out with the goal of escaping the manor as 5. And when put next to the older members of the Shadow's House, most of whom live under constant stress and fear but have convinced themselves that they can't do anything to change the system, Emiliko's idealism slaps. And pointing out that she is naive and idealistic doesn't discredit her ideas. The only thing that needs to change is the mindsets of the people in charge. We've already proven we can help out our favorite studios in their times of need. We've proven we can fund high-quality projects simply because we want them to exist. If enough of us donate to the crowdfunding operations currently open, you can show the people in charge how willing we are to support them. What's the point of giving up hope now, when the world outside the manor is right there? The last scene in the Shadows House anime hits such a weird meta level that I honestly kind of like it as the ending to the adaptation. After the characters have survived their greatest threat so far and all broken their brainwashing, for some reason we end on all of them singing the song that expresses complete support for the Shadows House and Emilico saying the name of the episode, completely going against everything they were supposed to be working towards. Is this supposed to imply that the characters were on the path towards taking down the system but in the end decided to submit to it for some reason? Cause I love that. It's like CloverWorks is talking directly through the screen saying, yeah, we just made another anime original ending, and no, we won't stop. In a world dominated by money, creative integrity has the lowest priority. You won't stop us. You can't change anything. For the sake of the Shadows family, bitch. I rewatched the Trash Chase Maylene episode while making this video, and the part where Garnt completely dismisses the Studio Trigger Patreon made me angry enough to finish writing this script. He says it's not enough to make an anime, and of course it's not, cause you old people keep telling us that the only way to support the industry is through streaming services that don't allow us to choose who we give money to, and useless Blu-rays and plastic merchandise. I don't want more Kana figures, I just want to give KyoAni all my money. And also, what's the deal with people criticizing ideas as utopia? Doesn't utopia mean good? If a system in which you can more easily support your favorite creators is utopian, then I want to live in a utopia. Why shouldn't we dream of and work towards the best possible outcome? Shadows House got a bad adaptation. So how do we, as Western anime fans, work to prevent that from happening in the future? Well, the Shadows House manga tells us to be idealistic. Follow in the footsteps of Emilico, who continues to dream of the best possible outcome no matter what the circumstances are. We can't give in and tell ourselves that this system is all there will ever be. We need realistic thinkers like Kate, but Kate wouldn't have survived without the positive thinking of Emilico. Idealism is necessary for change. The horror of Shadows House comes from seeing something so obviously not right being treated as completely normal. And that's how I felt when I entered this community. I thought I would have to get used to so many good stories being cut short. But now I'm like, why would I do that? Why should I tell myself to not be mad about good manga getting bad adaptations? Why should I tell myself I can only support the industry in these ways? Why should I tell myself I can't change anything, when the better option has been in front of us for years? If you like Studio Trigger, donate to their Patreon, and if you don't like Studio Trigger but still want to support your favorite creators, I guess you just have to get angry. The only thing you can do is get fucking mad. Go to an illegal, non-Crunchyroll piracy website and download your favorite anime and make an AMV of it and set it to death grips. Cause you're angry, and that's good. Being angry means you want change, a change to this system that continues to encourage corporate decisions over good art. But as Shadows House shows us, the fault isn't with those who feel the need to participate in the system. Of course, they do bear some responsibility for perpetuating it, but just like us, they are people with dreams, promises, and a basic desire to survive in the world we have found ourselves in. The one most at fault is the system itself. So don't yell at animators or directors on Twitter, because the real problem is the fact that the people in charge feel the need to end shows like this. Blame the system they are a part of and do what you can to change it. Do as much as you can to support studios which are actually pushing the industry forward, and don't give up hope that the others will follow behind them. Shadows House is one of my favorite manga ever, and it got a bad adaptation. It serves as a reminder of the system we have found ourselves in, of the decisions people must make to survive in that system, and all the creativity that is lost because of it. Chainsaw Man is one of my favorite manga ever, and it's getting an anime adaptation. It's always possible that manga readers will end up angry, and I don't think there's any point in telling them not to. But there's no point in going into it without hope either. Hope that this adaptation can be good, and hope that the industry can improve. And I feel that way because of Shadow's House and its bad adaptation. If you liked this video and want to support me, the best way you can do that is by sharing this video. You can also tell me anything I got wrong or give other ideas on how we can end bad adaptations in the comments. If you want to have a bit more fun, there's also a button that looks like a thumbs up. You can press that and it will light up and turn blue, and it looks pretty cool. And there's also a button that says subscribe. It's red with white text, and when you click it, it turns like gray. And it's also pretty cool. I have a lot of fun when I press that button, so you should do it. There's also this like more complicated looking button in the comments, or like a kind of like colorful looking button on my channel links thing. And if you click either of those, you'll go to a different website called Twitter. And then you can click the button that says follow, and it will turn blue. And it's pretty fun to do that also. It's just as fun as all the other buttons. So you should click all of those, and it will make me more happy. So do that. Thanks for watching.
I'm so